Brad Ashford, Cara Eastman. A debate between two Democrats eyeing Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District seat. For the next hour, a 6 News special. Here now, Brian Mastry from downtown Omaha.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the Democratic Congressional debate. We are coming to you live from the Omaha Press Club. It is a live studio audience, so we appreciate a lot of supporters of both candidates who are here for the events. I'm Brian Mastry from 6 News. We want to thank the League of Women Voters who are organizing this, as well as the Omaha Press Club, for this great space. Of course, the League of Women Voters, their goal is to not support candidates. It is basically to make voters better informed when they go to the ballot box. Let's take a look at a couple of the rules before we meet the candidates. So we put together a series of questions. The candidate who's directed the question gets a minute 30. The opponent gets a minute 30 to respond. Then each side gets 30 seconds for rebuttal. Closing arguments are 2 minutes each. And remember, folks, this is a debate. It is not a rally, but this is the time when you can cheer. Let's meet the candidates. We begin with Brad Ashford. And Cara Eastman. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. We did a coin flip a couple of days ago, and Team Ashford won the coin flip, so Team Ashford chose to do closing arguments last, so Team Cara Eastman chose to answer the first question second, so let's begin the debate. First question. Mr. Ashford, last week the U.S. led airstrikes against chemical production facilities in Syria were not authorized by Congress. Was this wrong? And when can a president use military force?
What's required in Congress for Congress to do today, first of all, thanks to the Press Club, to the League of Women Voters, and to Channel 6. What's absolutely imperative is that Congress pass an authorization for use of military force. That's an initiative that I supported when I was in Congress so that we can clearly set forth the mission in Syria and Iraq and throughout the Middle East. The lack of having an AUMF today amplifies the problem we have with the strike. Whether or not the strike was legal is a question that will be determined over time, but I think the clear lesson is that Congress needs to define the mission in the Middle East, needs to define the mission clearly, and needs to do so now.
Cara Eastman.
Thank you. I agree that we need congressional approval, but at the same time, we need for our president to have a clear strategy and to understand the rationale behind what's being done. What we know about what's happening in Syria and the atrocities that are being committed against people there is horrific, but the answer is not necessarily military strikes, especially when we don't have a budget in front of us, especially when we don't have congressional approval. And it is time for people to stand up and demand that the president use transparency when employing these actions. The way that we address the issue in Syria is to take Assad out of power. And that's not exactly what's being done, and there's no clear goals, there's no clear strategy, and we need to demand that right now.
The goal is to take Assad out of power, clearly. It was important that we make the strike occur. The strike occurred last year. It's important that we take out the chemical weapons. But it is to me, more important right now that, number one, we commit to the Middle East, we commit to Syria, we do not leave, and that Congress acts and gives to the president the authority that they wish him to have to be successful in Syria and throughout the Middle East.
Cara Eastman, 30 seconds.
Well, again, I mean, I don't know that we disagree necessarily on this, but I do think that right now in this time of chaos in the White House and with all of the haphazard policies that continue to be put forward, the American people deserve to know what the strategy is, what the goal is, and how we're going to pay for it.
Next question, this one goes to Cara Eastman. 2 months ago, 17 people lost their lives in the mass shooting in Parkland, Florida. As a result, students have led basically a national conversation on gun control. Specifically, we're getting into the teeth of some of this. Do you support or oppose legislation to require background checks on all gun sales, raise the age limit on purchase to 21? What about the high-capacity magazines? Should they be banned? What about assault-style weapons? Should they be banned?
The day after the Parkland shooting, my 16-year-old daughter came to me and said, "You're running for Congress. I need you to do something about this, and I need you to do something now because I'm afraid to go to school." This is not something that I ever experienced. I think most of us didn't experience that. And what we know is that the majority of the American public support some kind of common sense gun safety regulation. Background checks are supported by the Republicans. 83% of Republicans support them. We need mandatory waiting periods. And we have to also honor the fact that there are responsible gun owners out there. And we can do these things without violating their Second Amendment rights. So banning the sale of military assault weapons is probably a good step in the right direction. We don't need these weapons of war in the hands of people who are running around killing each other with them. And most importantly, I am concerned right now for our children and the fact that our children are being braver than policymakers when it comes to making these decisions. We can enact gun safety regulation without violating the Second Amendment.
Right, Ashford, 130.
You know, one of the first bills I ever passed as a legislator was the permit to purchase law in Nebraska. Nebraska was one of the first states in the country to pass a background check legislation for purchases of handguns. That legislation, that law is still in effect, and it's utilized today. I support comprehensive universal background checks. I support the 21 age limit. I support I support Congress acting in a transparent way by enacting legislation to create a commission, a congressional commission to investigate violence, to research the violence issues. We've done the same thing in Nebraska when I created the Office of Violence Prevention, giving grants to counties and police departments and to community groups like the Empowerment Network to work together to address violence. Assault weapon ban is now, in my view, something that should pass. It must pass. I introduced an assault weapon ban years ago. It became sort of one of those issues that kept getting introduced and never passed. But now I think the Parkland students and all the students across the country have created, I think, an atmosphere where such a ban could be passed by Congress, should be passed by Congress, and it should be passed by Congress now.
Cara Eastman, 30 seconds for rebuttal.
One question I would like to ask then, Mr. Ashford, is why 2 years ago in a debate with now Congressman Bacon did you say that you did not support a ban on military-style weapons?
I said I would not. You know, I introduced a ban on assault weapon bill many, many years ago. What had happened after the Heller decision in 2008 in the Supreme Court is that the strategy of trying to ban weapons, those people who wanted to do something about gun violence started to think about things like universal background checks, which I support. I think the Parkland student situation and the student marches and the student response has changed the game. And I think banning assault weapons, we have to know what they are, we have to define them, but I think that's the appropriate thing to do now.
Next question goes to Mr. Ashford. No one questions your commitment to public service, 16 years in the Nebraska legislature.
Wow.
2 years in Congress, but then you lost. And you lost to the man who now holds the seat, and you want the job back. Critics argue that perhaps you had your shot, even drove the car for a while, and it's time for fresh perspective. Are they right?
No. I've spent 18 years of my life, first, as you say, 16 years in the unicameral, 2 years in Congress. I'm a legislator. That's what I like to do. I like to find solutions. I don't like partisan bickering. You know, positions are not solutions. We've had success in the legislature in passing the permit to purchase law and addressing stem cell research, making sure that embryonic stem cell research and a pathway to cures was passed in Nebraska. I passed a bill in the Congress as a freshman in the minority party to change how the VA constructs medical centers. And we're, in fact, just today, you can go over to the VA and see that the new medical center at the VA is being constructed. The construction has started. That's what veterans needed. We passed the bill on the last day I was there in the lame duck. So I had to go back to Congress And yes, we lost the race. Losing's okay. It's how you deal with losing that's important. And I learned lessons from losing, but I was successful. I have been a successful legislator. I find solutions. I try to stay away from partisan divides. I try to place my constituents above party. And I think that's what we need to have in Congress. We were successful on the runway. We were successful on the VA Medical Center bill, LB 59, or HR 5099. So I think I did what I said I was going to do. I found 25 friends, actually more than that, and we passed legislation. That's why I want to go back.
Cara Eastman, isn't there something to be said about experience?
Absolutely. And while I would never argue that Mr. Ashford doesn't have experience, he certainly does. And I think we're all grateful for the experience and the things that he accomplished. But I would say that I don't think losing is okay. And I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of Democrats
Let's keep it down, folks.
running in this district and losing. And I was saddened that Mr. Ashford lost in 2016. I supported him. But I believe now what people are looking for, and in talking to voters in the district, people are looking for somebody who's going to be a champion and somebody who's going to represent their values. People are upset and they're afraid. People are worried about healthcare, they're worried about education, they're worried about crime, they're worried about the economy and how this impacts them. And I believe that right now, more than ever, we need political outsiders to enter into the ring, to put themselves out there. I'm a social worker by trade, so my background, my training is in looking at things holistically and in solving problems for people. My reputation in the community is for getting things done, and that's what I intend to do in Congress when I win.
Brad Ashford, 30 seconds.
I've spent most of my adult life trying to find solutions to difficult problems. I tended to tackle the most difficult problems in the state, and I tackled what I felt was a difficult issue in Congress. And I did it successfully. I look for solutions. I don't look for partisan bickering. I look for partners on both sides of the aisle. I go around this community too, and have done for many decades, and I believe what people want is someone who has a track record of creating an opportunity for solutions to difficult problems.
Cara Eastman, 30 seconds.
Right now, more than ever, we need somebody who is going to stand up to the current administration and the immoral and unethical things that are happening and the chaos that's happening in the White House. And we need somebody who's going to stand by her convictions when she's in Congress. That is what people are looking for in this district.
Next question goes to Cara Eastman. The budget bill approved by Congress and signed by President Trump contained $400 billion in new spending. There was something for everyone, it seemed, from defense to social programs. Even so, a number of Democrats voted against it because it included nothing for dreamers, the undocumented immigrants brought here as children. How would you have voted and why, and what is your path for citizenship?
I have had the honor and privilege of getting to know a number of dreamers in our own community. I have a dreamer that actually works on my campaign, and she has a go bag ready, packed, in case she gets deported. Right now, we have to understand that dreamers were brought here through no fault of their own, and they are here as our neighbors, our colleagues, our friends, our students at Metropolitan Community College. And the way that they are being used as political playing cards by politicians is immoral. We have to pass a Clean Dream Act, and we need to do it now. It's not fair to keep embedding DACA restrictions into bigger bills, and I would support right now passing that act. We have to do this for them. Otherwise, we are leaving people's lives in limbo, and that to me is just not how we act as Americans.
Brad Ashford, 90 seconds.
One of the greatest failures, in my experience, is in Congress is the issue of immigration. In 2013, the Senate passed a comprehensive immigration bill that called for a pathway to citizenship, not only for dreamers, but for dreamers and their families and other undocumented people who have lived here for a period of time, complied with the law, and contributed to society. That's what we have to have in this country. We need to pass the 2013 bill. When I was in the legislature, we were, I think, one of the first states I think we were the first state to expand Medicaid protection to undocumented moms for prenatal care. We defended the state's commitment to resident tuition at the University of Nebraska. We were one of the first states to do that. My commitment to immigrants, undocumented persons, has been consistent throughout my career. Carr is absolutely right. Carr is absolutely right. The Dreamers have been manipulated by the political system. This issue cries out for bringing people together, passing comprehensive immigration reform, making sure that the DACA kids are able to stay, but go beyond that so that families are not broken up. That's been my commitment for 30 years. That will always be my commitment. And we do need a clean bill. It has been, the DACA kids have been manipulated. And that happened when I was in Congress. So I agree with Carr on that.
30 seconds.
Another question. When you were in Congress, you did vote for a bill that was actually against DACA. And I think that's something that people deserve to hear an answer to.
I voted for the Homeland Security funding bill. I'm never going to compromise on national security. ISIS was on the march. This is why we have to pass legislation and not just have executive orders dealing with these issues. We have to pass legislation so that the DACA kids would not be used as a pawn in these other games. But I voted to fund DACA when I was in Congress. I knew that when we voted on the Homeland Security bill that DACA would be funded, but that belays the point. The point is we need comprehensive immigration legislation. It needs to be passed by the Congress, not by executive order.
Next question, this goes to Brad Ashford. What is your greatest public service accomplishment, and what did you learn from your greatest failure?
Well, I think first of all, I haven't won every election, but every time I have run and not won, I've learned a lesson from that experience. The lesson that I always have learned, generally, is if you listen to the people. Omaha is an amazing place. I used to make a speech called my Omaha speech that I would make on the floor when I talked about the Veterans Hospital bill. I used to make a speech to say, why only in Omaha would this community get behind raising money to build a hospital, a medical facility for veterans. Only in Omaha, only in Nebraska can that happen. I suppose the greatest, of all the legislation I've been involved in, was both a negative in a way, having lost the election. I knew I had to go back to DC. I knew I had to pass this bill. There was no guarantee we would pass it. And literally, about 15 minutes before the end of the 114th Congress, H.R. 5099 passed. We were able, at the last minute, to call together Republicans and Democrats on the floor of the House to say, Brad's bill is going to pass. We know he's a Democrat. We know he's a lame duck. We know he's in the minority party. But this bill will help veterans. I think going back to Washington and making that happen was probably the greatest thrill that I've ever experienced as a legislator.
Cara Eastman, what's your greatest public service accomplishment, and what did you learn from your greatest failure?
Well, I've spent the last 12 years in Omaha raising money to invest in green, safe, healthy housing for kids. I've raised $13 million. I've worked with the EPA and HUD to bring more resources into the community, pushed on the EPA when I didn't feel like they were spending money in the most effective and efficient way, when they weren't hiring local contractors, and ensured that federal resources were coming to the community to address one of our community's biggest issues. We're still the largest residential Superfund site in the nation because of lead contamination. And I was instrumental in making sure that we got funds into the community to help the kids, looking at data, making sure we were using that money efficiently and effectively. So I think that's probably my greatest achievement. In terms of failures, and what I've learned is, I think as a social worker, as somebody who's working in a nonprofit, we learn from our failures every day. We learn how to best serve people in the community. And when we don't do that, we learn how to fine-tune our strategies in order to meet the needs. And we consistently ask for feedback from our clients because that's the way we actually help people.
Brett Ashford, 30 seconds.
Kara's done a great job on that issue, and she deserves credit for what she has accomplished, and I commend her for it. I support expanding Superfund. There's legislation in the Congress right now. Scott Peters, who's a good friend of mine from San Diego, has a bill to expand grants for the Superfund program. I support that. You know, we need to help people like Kara and her group do what they do and do it better. So Congress has a significant role, and I support that.
Kara Eastman.
Well, expanding the Superfund program has its benefits and its deficits, to be honest. I mean, right now there's a lot of federal money, it's a lot of private money that's going into the Superfund site. What we need is a more efficient, effective Superfund program, and that's true in all government programs. We need to stop this back and forth over big government, small government. What we all want and what we all deserve is effective, efficient government.
Next question goes to Kara Eastman. We're going to talk health care now. You support the Expanded and Improved Medicare Act for All. For those who don't know, it's health care for all residents in the U.S., dental, vision, prescription drugs, no co-pays, deductibles, that sort of thing. It's really a single-payer program, but it's been introduced every year since 2003, and it's still sitting there. Is that a writing on the wall? And in your view, what needs to happen with the current law to ensure affordable care and coverage is there for people when they need it?
I actually think the writing on the wall is the increased support that we continue to see for providing health care for everybody. The reason I'm running for Congress is because of my mother's outrageous medical bills, where she was forced to pay they were asking her to pay $2,500 for one pill, and her prescription drugs were already $800 a month, and that was with Medicare. Right now, under our current health care system, we pay $10,000 per person in the United States. An expanded Medicare for All Act, having read it and looked at the data, that would drop down to $7,000 per person. It is something we can afford. It is the right thing to do. And in the wealthiest country in the nation, the fact that we have neglected to provide health care to everybody is one of the biggest travesties. And what we're seeing across the board is that people are starting to understand how we can save money doing this, how it actually does provide health care to people, that no, we're not gonna have extended waiting lines. People already are waiting for their medical care. It's time that people in Congress, it's time that policymakers actually embrace these issues and understand that people are dying and people are having to choose between paying their medical bills and putting food on the table, and that is not the American way.
Brett Ashford.
When I was in Congress, I voted 11 times against the repeal of the ACA. We never had an opportunity to vote on some sort of comprehensive plan to make the ACA better. There is no question that health care is the #1 issue in 2018 election. No question whatsoever. I support, the problem I have with health care for all, or the Medicare for all, or the bill that Kara's talking about is, for one thing, is it has been out there since 2003. What we need to do is find something in the center that will work, that will provide affordability and choice. And I'm afraid that if we hold out for this option, it will never happen, and we'll continue 10 years from now, look back and say, gee, I wish we would have done something because we didn't get X or Y. I support the Medicare X program, which gives every American an opportunity to buy into Medicare, that eventually employers can buy into Medicare on the ACA. Basically, employers and individuals can buy into Medicare. I also support something that's very interesting, is the opt-out program, that idea that Congressman Ami Bera has proposed, which simply says that you're automatically enrolled in health care, but you can opt out. But that gets people enrolled. We have no option in this country but to provide affordable health care with a choice. And that's why I think the Medicare option makes sense. The Medicare for all option is very, very expensive and will be difficult to implement.
30 seconds.
Well, it's not actually very, very expensive, as I just said, and it's also not that difficult to implement. I mean, this is a time where we need people to step up and fight for what the American people are asking for. And in this district, knocking on the doors and talking to people, healthcare is the #1 issue they talk about. People are dying. People are getting sicker and sicker, and it's time for us to start investing in people, and providing healthcare is certainly one of the ways we can do that.
150 million Americans get their health care from their employer. We should not take that away from them. I don't want to take the Medicare Trust Fund and put it into some other government program. The price tag for Kara's idea is about $2 trillion a year, which is twice the budget of the United States government. Let's have a Medicare option. The Medicare system works, the structure's in place, the administrative costs are lower. Let's give every American opportunity to buy a Medicare policy on the ACA, and eventually have employers, give employers the ability to do so as well.
All right, next question. This one is aimed at Brad Ashford.
Well, not aimed necessarily.
Directed.
It's addressed.
There we go. The founder of Facebook appeared before Congress this month, pledging to do better in protecting users' personal information. Did you guys watch it?
What was that?
The Facebook founder appearing before Congress?
Yes, we did. I did watch that.
Is it time for a company like that and others like it to face congressional imposed regulations?
Yes. You know, I support the Privacy Bill of Rights that President Obama has endorsed and put forth, and I in an executive order, I support that idea. I support the idea that every individual who uses Facebook and provides private information to Facebook has the ability to ask what private information they do have and who that private information is going to. Congress has sat on its hands on this issue for a long time and needs to act. And the consumers have the right to have the ability to know what Cambridge Analytica was doing with that information. In the 2016 election, you know, we were victims of the Cambridge Analytica effort. We were told in August of 2016 that our emails, our campaign emails, were being hacked by the Russians. I mean, this is serious stuff, and Congress needs to act, and we do need to get to the bottom of the Russian interference in the election, because this is where it converges. It converges in this sphere, in this Facebook and related companies, in that sphere. That's where it converges. And it's important that we find Congress to provide the oversight. It was absolutely ridiculous for my friends on the other side of the aisle to close down the investigation in the House that Adam Schiff has been leading to get to the bottom of that collusion.
Kara Eastman, I'd aim the same question at you.
I agree. We need some kind of oversight. We're all concerned about the state of our elections and making sure that we have fair and secure elections. I think we've also seen that companies like Facebook are getting to the point where we consider them too big to fail, and we need to have some kind of checks and balances over the ways that information around privacy is shared, absolutely. But I think right now we also need somebody who's going to stand up to the current administration and demand answers, and honest answers, to what we know about Russian meddling in elections, what we know about potential collusion with Russians. I mean, there's so much happening on the internet these days that it's going to be difficult to control, but it is time for Congress to take action.
Brad?
The Trump administration is chaotic. Is minute by minute, hour by hour, we have no idea what's going on. It's chaotic. It's absolutely critical that Congress pass legislation on all these topics, whether it's health care, whether it's privacy. That's the way you deal with a president that you can't control or even deal with. Congress has to pass laws, and they have to take those laws that they pass and send them down to the White House. That is not what's happening. That is not in the best interest of this country, and it's killing us.
Kara?
Correct.
It's nice when we can all get along.
Agreement on that topic.
See, we can.
I don't want to talk out of school, but I find a sense of agreement there.
Next question. This
We
one
just
goes,
made the 6-hour debate
Yes.
down to 5. There we
Right. Good thing I had all those extra questions at the end. Cara Eastman, for the sake of argument, let's say the Democrats win back the House. You win. Who gets your vote for Speaker of the House, and what committee would be first on your list?
Look, one of the reasons I'm running is because I think we need new leadership in the Democratic Party. We need new leadership in both parties, to be frank. And people are excited about political outsiders, different kinds of people running right now. People are excited about women running for office. I would probably wait until I were in Congress to make that decision about who the leader should be, because I'd like to have more information and get to know people a little bit better before making decisions about who the right person to be in a position of leadership is. But I would be honored to serve on a number of committees, including the Ethics Committee, because that's certainly a place where we need people with good ethics. And also education in the workforce and energy and commerce. Those are things that I'm passionate about. Those are things that I have a proven track record in getting things accomplished in, and places where I think that my expertise and my experience could be well served.
Brad Ashford, you get back there. Who's your vote for
Those
Speaker?
are good committees, by the way. So, you know, I was only in Congress 2 years. I was pretty new, actually. It's not as if I'd been there for 20 or 30 years, so I feel like I'm sort of a newbie, but I was able to make friends, and I have great relationships there. And one of the reasons why I wanted to run again were my friends, the friends that I made. When I got there, I discovered that when I said I needed 25 friends, that was not enough. 25 friends was not enough to get the Veterans Hospital bill passed. It wasn't enough to do a lot of the things we want to do in Congress. So I have that foundation. As far as the leadership, there will be a fight. Well, I don't want Kevin McCarthy. Okay, everybody can applaud. I don't want Kevin McCarthy, and I don't want anything to do with Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan has made, I thought possibly that Paul Ryan could get something done in the House. But when he said, I'm not going to do anything on immigration until the president tells me what he'll sign, that's not the kind of leadership we need in Congress. Congress needs to deal with these issues. They need to deal with them head on. They need to do it in a bipartisan manner. If it's health care, immigration, these are tough issues. John Boehner didn't even take up the bill in 2013. We need new leadership in the House. It's very important. It's very important that Democrats take control of the House, because we can start to work from the center and bring Republicans in to pass meaningful legislation.
Cara Eastman?
Well, I agree. It's time for new leadership. I feel like one of the ways that we've seen the broken down leadership is in the fact that right now the leader of the Democratic Party has taken sides even in this election, which seems unfair. But I've heard Mr. Ashford say that he's running for Congress because he misses his friends, and I appreciate that he does, of course, have friends in Congress. I'm running for Congress because I miss my country.
Brad Ashford?
The relationships I made in Congress are critical to getting legislation passed. That's the point. Sure, I miss my friends. They were good friends, Republicans and Democrats alike. But the point is, I learned in the unicameral over 16 years, I learned that in order to get something done, in order to pass something, in order to do something that is a solution to a problem, you just don't take sort of political positions. You got to find solutions. Positions aren't solutions. You do that by building relationships. That's what I'm good at. That's what helped us get our legislation passed in the House. And I want to get back and do it again and do more of it.
This next question goes to Brad Ashford. President Trump has rolled back many Obama-era policies when it comes to the environment, from fuel efficiency benchmarks to downsizing national monuments to tough talk of the climate agreement in Paris. But the president talked about these changes in his campaign, won the election. Elections have consequences. So doesn't he get to push through what he wants?
No. This is what he will, ever during the Bush administration, I would say, even in the Obama administration, but clearly now, because Congress is not working to pass legislation on tough issues, including the environment. It leaves the field open to executive orders. Ryan Zinke, who I sat next to in the Armed Services Committee, is wrong about drilling for oil off the coast of the United States. It's wrong. It's wrong to drill further in the ANWR. Those are issues that need to be addressed by the Congress, not by the President, not by Ryan Zinke, and Pruitt is a disaster. The only way, he needs to go. He needs to go, and he needs to go now. He's got tremendous ethical issues. He's got issues on a personal level, but what he's destroying the environment. He's destroying what President Obama did, not just massaging it or moving it around a little bit, but destroying. That's why Congress has to act. That's why we need to find a center. That's why we need to get people in Congress who will work together across party lines and put solutions over parties, put constituents over parties. The environment is suffering because of it, and it's wrong.
Cara Eastman.
Climate change is the #1 moral issue facing our children right now. And it is time that we take bold action. We don't actually have time to wait. We are 60 harvests away from our food supply being almost completely depleted. It is time that we have leaders in office who understand this. I have been running a children's environmental health organization for 12 years. I understand the impact that investing in green, healthy housing would have in communities in terms of building up a workforce, in terms of increasing the tax base for community, and also creating safer, healthier environments for our kids. This is actually an area where I have been very, very strong. I've testified publicly against the Keystone Pipeline, mostly because of the environmental impact that could have on our state. This is something that people in the district are worried about, and they should be worried about this. And this is also a place where I think that we differ a little bit. When in Congress, Mr. Ashford voted against the Clean Power Plan. He voted for the Keystone Pipeline. I believe that we need leaders right now who are going to take climate change seriously, who are going to stand up to the administration right now. Of course, Scott Pruitt needs to go, but we also need people who understand firsthand what the environment means and how we can take bold action to reverse the course of action that we're on right now.
Brett.
I support a clean power bill, but the clean power bill shouldn't be so overreaching that states don't have the flexibility they need to get to the goals. Nebraska, OPPD and MPPD are en route to get to 2030 and to meet their goals and the 2030 goals. As far as the Keystone Trans-Canada Pipeline, that I agree. It should not happen. We don't need it. The vote I cast in Congress was to support the efforts in Nebraska to provide alternative pathways and routes for the pipeline. That was an effort that was supported by environmental groups. We passed a bill. I told the president that I thought we had protections in place, but no, I don't think we need the Keystone Pipeline. So that's my position. That's the position I would take in the future. But I think I believe we did in Nebraska try to come up with alternatives, tried to address the environmental concerns when I was there.
Cara Eastman.
Well, I think it's easy to say this is what I would do and this is what I will do, but all evidence to the contrary. And I am concerned right now about leadership in this district not understanding the impact that the environment has, particularly on Congressional District 2. We have to take action. We need people who are going to stand up and fight right now. And yes, there are bipartisan solutions, but that doesn't mean just voting with the other side. That means finding solutions that we can all agree on and actually taking steps in the right direction.
Next question goes to Cara Eastman. The federal minimum wage at $7.25 an hour. Nebraska's $9, Iowa's $7.25. Would you fight to raise the federal minimum wage, or do you think it's a state and local issue?
One of the great honors that I have in my job here in Omaha is getting to work with families every day. And we see so many families that struggle. When we talk about unemployment being low, That is true, right? Across the country, unemployment is down. But in Omaha in particular, it is as well, except for certain communities. People of color are still struggling with unemployment issues, and we see so many families that are where a mom or a dad are working 2-3 jobs to put enough food on the table. I do support raising the minimum wage. I think that needs to happen on a federal level. I also support incentivizing students to go to school. I want kids to keep coming to Metro. And so I think there are some creative solutions that we can come up with, but the reality is right now, you try living on $7, $8, $9 an hour. It's not feasible. And we have to start putting people first. It's amazing what we decide we can afford when we want to give corporate welfare to large corporations. But the idea that we haven't made those same accommodations for regular working people, for the middle class, is not something I can stand behind and watch happen. So I would actually favor increasing the minimum wage.
Brad Ashford.
I supported lifting or increasing the minimum wage when I was in the legislature. Nebraska has done it. I support a $15 an hour minimum wage phased in over a period of time. This is one of the best examples, and I also support expanding the earned income credit as we have done in Nebraska, and it's on it in our tax code. We have to change how we do business in Congress. That's the problem. We can find, when we're dealing with executive orders to run our country, we're giving to the president way too much power. Why I want to go back to Congress, because we have to be a check and balance against the executive. We have to be a check and balance against the executive. Yes, you know, if we had raised the minimum wage incrementally, as had been the case in the past, when parties did work together and we had bipartisan solutions, the minimum wage would be about $10 an hour now. Congress takes positions, the members of Congress, they go into their party caucuses, both of them, they take extreme ideological positions, and they don't come to the center, they don't solve problems. That's what I want to do. That's my experience, that's what I've done for my entire career. That's why I want to go back. The minimum wage is a great example of the failure of Congress to respond to what is clearly evident.
Cara.
For the families living in this district who are struggling again to put food on their table or choosing between paying their utility bills and paying medical bills, we don't have time. And I can't stand up here and say that I would support something incremental when families are suffering in this district. People need somebody who's going to stand up for them right now and represent their values in Congress.
Brett.
Listen, if I could wave a magic wand and get a $15 an hour minimum wage tomorrow, I'd vote for it. Legislating is not telling people what to do. Legislating is in the Congress is finding 218 people who will agree with you. That is an art. That is difficult and it's challenging. And it has been terribly challenging over the last several years. What is important is that we pass legislation in these areas, that we address the poverty that Cara is talking about, but we only can do that by finding middle ground. You can't just say, I'm going to do this and then have it happen. You have to work together to have these initiatives pass and move forward.
Next question goes to Brad Ashford, the trade war. President Trump's threats to hit China with import taxes. The Department of Agriculture has said that China's response to that would target U.S. soybeans, pork, beef, corn, with all those tariffs hitting Nebraska harder than most other states. How would you fix the trade imbalance with China?
Well, first of all, having a trade imbalance, or basically a trade deficit, is not necessarily a bad thing. All economists I've ever talked to and heard from have said that a trade deficit in and of itself is evidence of a strong economy. Because we buy things, we trade things, we sell things, we bring things in. So a trade deficit in and of itself is not the problem that we need to address. The problem is, and always has been, is China itself emerging as the second greatest economic power in the world from a very poor country just a few years ago, exploded their economy. And they stole intellectual property, no question. And I've been involved with companies and with that issue for many years. It happened. It happens. We need to be tough as nails on the Chinese on intellectual property. And we need to put the pressure on. Tariffs don't work. They will kill the Nebraska economy. They will kill the ag economy. They will kill our manufacturing base here. We're an exporting state. We export to Mexico. We export to Canada. We export a great deal to China. We have to negotiate tough. We have to get the best deal we can get, but we cannot slap tariffs and expect that somehow that's going to eradicate the problem, because it won't. A trade war never works, never has historically, and we should not, and the president is just dead wrong on this issue.
Cara Eastman?
Well, the president's not just dead wrong, the president's all over the place. And it's hard to know from one day to the next what's really happening. And so I agree with Mr. Ashford about the tariffs. And also, we have to understand that, again, a trade war is a terrible thing for our country. Trade is particularly important when it comes to our agricultural economy in Nebraska. And having talked to farmers who are really worried right now, they're worried about the impact that this is going to have on them. But it's also important that we look at our trade deals that we have with all of our partners. Those need to be modernized. I am somebody that supports fair trade. We need to be looking out for workers and for the environment when we're crafting our trade deals. It's not just about money. It's also about the impact that these things have on our people. And right now, this idea of putting these tariffs on is going to significantly, detrimentally impact Nebraska's economy that's already suffering, and I'm very concerned.
Brad?
Okay, he's dead wrong and all over the place. So clearly we have to look out for our working people. But in Nebraska, when I was in Congress, I visited 80 businesses. Many of them were exporters. They were manufacturers and ag-based manufacturing and manufacturing generally. They all are part of, most all of them are part of the global chain, product chain. We are part of that global world. If we start stopping, though, in any way through tariffs or other mechanisms, stopping that trade in any way or curtailing it, our employment's going to go up, poverty's going to go up. There are no good outcomes.
Cara?
Well, I agree. And this is, again, an area where we need people who are going to fight and stand up for working people in Nebraska around these issues. We need people who understand firsthand the impact that this kind of stuff has on regular working people. And I believe I am somebody who does know that and who will fight for people.
This next question is directed to Cara Eastman. Do you support eliminating the cap on wages, currently $128,000 and some change annually, subject to the 6% Social Security tax, in order to ensure that the program remains solvent? If not, how would you strengthen the program?
I do actually support eliminating the cap, because that would actually fill in the gap that we have right now. Social Security is in a precarious situation. It's been one of the most successful government programs we've had, and so many people rely on their Social Security retirement to live. Eliminating the cap is lofty, and but I think it's something that we should do, because we have the data in front of us to show that it would fill in the deficit gap that we're going to experience eventually. And right now, it doesn't really make sense that somebody who's earning $113,000 a year pays the same as a billionaire. It's time that we stop electing policymakers who are solely looking out for the billionaire class and for large corporations. We have plenty of people. Those corporations are doing fine. Billionaires are doing great. Millionaires are doing great. We need people who understand what it's like to be a regular working person and somebody who's going to fight for them.
Brad?
So, yes, when I was in Congress, I signed on to John Larson's Social Security bill. And that is the only bill that I know of that's out there that makes sense and it can actually pass. And what it does is it increases the cap over $400,000. Remember, the cap goes up automatically every few years. So at a certain point, maybe 20 years, I don't know the exact number, down the line, the cap, between the 118 and the 400 will close, so that so the cap and effect go away. That will solidify the Social Security system for 70 years. That now will run out or be depleted in 2034. I think we also have to consider taking the disability fund and the Social Security trust fund and combining them. It makes no sense to me to have them be separated out, and there's legislation to do that. But right now we're at 2034. Under the Larson bill, that would be extended by 70 years. And so it can be done, but again, it has to be done in a bipartisan way in order to get both houses of the Senate and the House and the President to put make these matters legal, make it into a law. Again, this process is not easy. You have the House and the Senate and the executive. So we have to have a specific piece of legislation, gather bipartisan support, but the Larson bill, I think, gets us there. It's a 70-year extension.
Cara.
Look, I'm not pretending that any of these things would be easy to do in Congress, especially with the way that Congress is right now. But I think what is important to point out is the fact that voters are looking for somebody who they can get behind and understand their positions on things. And so, again, touting bipartisan support for stuff, of course we need bipartisan support for stuff. That's how you get laws passed. But we also need leaders who are going to show the voters who they are and stand up for their convictions.
Brad? You're good?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
All right, we're running short. We want to make sure we get in the closing argument, so we'll do it a little different to get in a couple more questions. You get 30 seconds to answer the question, no rebuttal. This one is directed to Brad Ashford. How do you give me your 30-second pitch for making college more affordable? How do we do that?
I've supported legislation. I support the Courtney bill, for example, which lowers the cap to or the interest rate to 3%. I think you have to do that right off the bat. I also support expanding the public service exemption that allows people to get credit for public service against their tuition. And I also think that right now it's 25 years or 20 years when your loan can be extinguished. I think we should lower that age. I think we have the money to do that. We have Pell Grants that are funded. I think we have more funding there to also lower that from 20 years, like say, to 15 years when those general obligations are. There's a lot we can do.
Your 30-second elevator pitch for making college cheaper.
As a board member of Metropolitan Community College, I support community college. And know that money is still a barrier to students going to Metro. I also support debt-free tuition because the student debt that we have in this country is crippling us, it's crippling our economy, and it's threatening our national security. So while I'm not going to say that I support free tuition, because I do think you need skin in the game, I do think that we need to make public education, especially community college, much more affordable for students so that there are no barriers to entry.
All right, we'll continue the lightning round. This one is directed to Cara Eastman. Who is your biggest role model and why? And you can't be related to them.
Oh, I can't be related to them. Does my husband count? I just met him at a bar.
I don't think we could cover that in 30 seconds.
Wow, that's a great question. My biggest role model who I'm not related to. I had the honor of getting to sit next to Senator Tammy Baldwin at a dinner event recently, and she's a senator who ran and won in Wisconsin, in a place where probably she shouldn't have won. And she told me that the way she won was by going out and talking to voters and listening to them, and that's basically what I followed in this campaign. And so she's somebody I look up to.
Brad Ashford, you got 30 seconds to think about it.
I have a role model. No, I mean, in Congress, my role model was clearly Steny Hoyer. He's a member who's been there for 32 years. He's the whip of the Democratic Party. He has the ability to bring people together. He's been very successful. But I also want to mention my basketball coach, Jim Tangdahl, Westside High School, because he was somebody who had faith in me. I wasn't the best basketball player. as some of you who are my vintage remember. But he gave me a shot, and to me, that was the most important thing in my life at that time, was to get to play basketball at Westside High School. It in many ways changed my life.
All right, last question. We'll start with Brad Ashford, 30 seconds. Whose campaign donations would you return and why?
Oh, TransCanada, I did send that one back. I think they sent me $1,000 at one point. I've never gotten any money from the NRA. I've been their public enemy #1 for so long that, and they did all sorts of things to me. But anyway, we're not going to get into that. But, you know, certainly I don't expect to get donations from the Koch brothers. I don't expect to get, our good friend Don Bacon just got Koch brother money, and Mercer money, and NRA money. I mean, that's not helpful.
Cara?
I'm proud to have been recently endorsed by Justice Democrats, and so in my campaign, we do not accept corporate PAC money from any corporations. I believe that we need to bring politics and campaigns back to the people, and I'm really proud of the over 2,800 individual donations we have for my campaign.
All right, as we mentioned at the beginning, you get 2 minutes for your closing arguments. Based on a coin flip, Brad Ashford will go last. You have 2 minutes. Cara Eastman.
I have spent my entire career in public and social service. For the last 12 years, I've been growing a nonprofit in Omaha that's addressing one of our greatest needs, which is protecting our children from environmental hazards and a dilapidated housing stock that most policymakers are just unwilling to do anything about because they don't think it's sexy enough for their campaigns. I am tired of seeing people struggle to put food on the table, choosing between paying energy bills and paying transportation costs. And I'm somebody that has focused on solutions. My reputation is in bringing people together who come from different backgrounds, different values, different political ideologies. When my nonprofit was started, our board was mostly appointed by the Nebraska delegation, which was mostly Republican. My reputation is in bringing people together to get things done. Now more than ever, we need somebody who is going to stand up for the values of the people in this district. I have knocked on, in my campaign with my team, who are here today, over 40,000 doors in the district. And what we're hearing is that people are excited. They're excited about a lifelong Democrat running. They're excited about somebody who stands up for their values. And they're excited about a woman running because it's time for change. I would be honored to earn the vote of everyone here and everyone watching. And I would be honored to be the first woman elected to serve the Nebraska 2nd in Congress. And I would love to have your vote. Thank you.
Brad Ashford, 2 minutes, closing.
You know, I'm running because I believe in solution-based government. America is tired of extreme partisan bickering, and that doesn't get us anywhere. It never has, and it's gotten worse. Solutions come from hard work in building coalitions in a legislative body, without regard to party, but understanding the values of your party, but being able to reach beyond that and find common ground. I know how to work with people of differing positions. My record as a legislator includes the Permit to Purchase Act in Nebraska, still in place today, the compromise we reached on stem cell research with pro-life people and pro-choice people that enable the University of Nebraska Medical Center to do life-changing research. That was a year-long effort. And when we got the bill passed on the last day of the lame duck to change how the Veterans Administration builds medical facilities and constructs medical facilities and provides services to veterans. Who was it that made that pitch for me at the very end? It was Steny Hoyer. It was other Republicans, Dave Young from Iowa, Jeff Fortenberry, who stood up and said, this is a good bill. We need to pass this bill. The way to get things done is to find friends on both sides of the aisle. Jeff Miller, the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, who pushed my bill through the committee, calls me every 2 weeks. Where is that building? Why isn't it built? A very conservative Republican. If you can find common ground on one thing and do something for your district and do something for your country, it's worth the effort. I'm running because I want to get back to work. I'm tired of this layoff. I want to get back to work for you. I want to keep passing legislation and getting things done for the American people. Thank you. I don't think we have a rebuttal, do we?
No. You can shake hands, you bet.
We can shake hands.
Brad Ashford, Cara Eastman, thank you very much for your time. Good luck on May 15th for the primary. Thank you. Thanks. And a reminder, we appreciate the press club here for helping us out, as well as the League of Women Voters. I'm Brian Master from 6 News. We'll see you next time. Make sure you vote.